Hi everyone, my name is Taylor Christensen and this is my organizational crisis presentation. So the objectives for this presentation are to go over what the patient zero simulation is, go over adaptive leadership frameworks, how to build resilience, how to adapt to change, creating relationships, communication, building trust, difficult conversations, virtual teams, leadership styles, and using failure as an adaptive lesson. So what is the patient zero simulation? We based a lot of stuff we did this class on the simulation. I think I did it at least 3 times, but it was a really cool way to make decisions in kind of a high stress situation and use what I've learned from the class in the simulation. But it was designed to place students in a high stress situation with no expertise, and it helps us learn how to apply knowledge from the adaptive leadership framework to help us learn about a typical team dynamic, rebound from losses, and how to build resilience. So I'm not going to go over all of these decisions, I just wanted to put them here, but the results, going over using what I wanted to do the first time without any background knowledge, 13% ended up infected, there was a medium morale, and then an 18% likelihood of societal collapse. And that was with me making decisions how I wanted to, and then the second time I did it when I did opposite of everything I wanted to do, they actually did a lot better. So I needed to switch my leadership styles, I see. So adaptive leadership framework. This was designed by Ron Heffitz and Mary Linsky in 2009. It was designed, or the purpose of it is to mobilize people during difficult times, to tackle challenges, enable change, and then thrive in a new changed environment. And the 3 steps are to diagnose, mobilize, and act. When you're in certain situations, you need to be able to change your leadership type. Just like I said in the simulation, I was doing what I wanted to do, and then I did the complete opposite, and they did better. So I had to adapt my leadership style. Building resilience. So because companies are changing at such a fast pace, it's important to be resilient. Companies that do not believe there will be setbacks will end up unprepared and fail. So this quote I found says, "Since the pace and intensity of contemporary work culture are not likely to change, it's more important ever to build resilient skills to effectively navigate your work life." And there's 4 steps to building resilience. The first one is to develop well-established routines. That's just implementing systematic thinking in a crisis. Step 2 is to practice doing more with less. So get used to working lean and practice achieving goals with fewer resources. Step 3 is to identify priorities. So figure out what it is that is crucial to keeping the business up and running through a crisis. And step 4 is to give up control. So a lot of times we want to kind of control everything as a leader, but I think sometimes we need to let other people take over if they know more than we do. Oops. Okay, adapting to change. So there's two quotes I really liked. And the first one is, "Now more than ever before, leaders all over the world are facing change and complexity. The coronavirus pandemic has presented us all with new challenges, new circumstances, and new uncertainties in the workplace." Ever since COVID, a lot of companies have had to go virtual, and that's a big thing that people have had to adapt to. And then the second quote is, "Adaptability is a requirement because change is constant and inevitable. Leaders must be flexible to succeed." So the 5 behaviors of a successful leader are adjusting leadership and management style to changing situations, accepting change as a positive, revising plans as necessary, and then considering other people's concerns. So especially in a crisis, and if you're a democratic leader, you need to listen to what other people are feeling, and that also helps you build those relationships. And then next we have creating relationships. So this quote I found says, "Relationship and people skills are not merely job performance. They are what separate a successful executive from the rest." So as a teacher, I really got this pounded into my mind. The better your relationships are with your students or your employees, the more successful they're going to be, the more they're going to trust you, and the harder they're going to work. So the 3 steps for creating relationships as a leader are to reset your emotional tone. So instead of focusing on negative with a person, focus on bringing up positive memories. The second step is to create a shared narrative. So listen to what people think and resolve conflicts together. And then build relational agility. So try new and different ways to interact with one another. And then we have communication. I use a lot of quotes, but this quote says, "It allows people to exchange ideas and information in an open and honest manner, allowing all parties to gain new insights and understand one another." So there's 6 types of communication. There is written, verbal, nonverbal, cross-cultural, and listening skills. Without proper communication, organizations cannot thrive. So written is just like emails, text, and writing. Verbal is talking to someone. Presentation is what I'm doing right now. Not all leaders have to present, but I think it should still be a skill you have. Nonverbal is your body language, and that says a lot. Cross-cultural is to have both verbal and nonverbal skills, changing from culture to culture. And then listening is a huge part of communication. I think a lot of people don't realize that. Building trust. So trust plays an exceptionally important role in leadership. Without trust, there really cannot be effective leaders. And I think when I was doing the simulation, I was trying to build trust with my community. I mean, it was a simulation, but that lady coming on the video every day and telling the country what was going on was her building trust and communicating those skills, which was cool. So there are 6 building blocks of trust. The first one is reliability and dependability, and that's to be true to your word and follow through on your commitments. Don't say you're going to do something and then not do it, even if it's a punishment. Transparency. You want to share your thoughts and considerations and tell people what's going on and where they stand. So in the simulation, she told everyone what was going on. I'm sure people were confused, but they knew what was going on at all times. And then 3, competency. Be sure that you are capable of doing what you say you can do. 4 is sincerity, authenticity, and congruency. That is to make sure that you say how you feel and do not hide your own feelings. I think as a leader, a lot of times we want to hide our own feelings because we're embarrassed to share them, but it's important to share them. And then 5 is fairness. So make sure that everyone is treated fairly and with respect, and that everybody feels valued and important. When people feel valued, they will work harder for you. And then 6, and the last one, is openness and vulnerability. So acknowledge your mistakes and apologize when you're in the wrong. It can be really embarrassing when you mess up, but when you acknowledge it, it makes you get a lot more respect. So how to have a difficult conversation. With the simulation, our conversations were difficult. We had to tell the country what was going on and how many people were dying and everything. So there's this quote. It says, "The longer the conversation festers, the more resentment tends to build, and the harder the discussion becomes once you've worked up the courage to start it." So there's a lot of steps in this presentation. There's 5 steps to having a difficult conversation. The first one is to practice building trust. So this makes employees less likely to assume negative or like you're doing anything with negative intent. The second one is consider the conversation layers. So there's 3 layers to really think about, and that's what happened, how we feel about what happened, and how the incident threatens each person's personality or identity. And then the third one is to actively listen. When you're listening, you should be asking clarifying questions. Step 4 is to speak in specifics. So the more specific you can be, the better. You want to focus on facts and examples. And then brainstorm together solutions and how you can fix whatever the issue is. In the simulation, everything was virtual. Our conversations with our country was virtual. So we're going to go over why virtual teams are difficult. So more and more companies are moving to remote settings. It's harder to build trust because you don't have that body language and that face-to-face interaction. It's definitely harder to communicate. And some people don't really know how to do things virtually well, so that puts a big barrier between for the older people and younger people. Employees feel alienated or disconnected, and there's a lower productivity. So, let's see. The best way to lead your virtual team is to foster a culture of communication. So you want to give regular updates and check-ins, be explicit about how your staff should communicate, and then provide them with written guidelines. Step 2 is to establish a mission statement. So in a few sentences, you want to document why your business is doing what it's doing or why your country is doing what it's doing, and in the simulation. But fall back on that. If they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, you can tell them to look at the mission statement. Step 3 is to encourage collaboration and team building. So it helps teams bond and helps them create more trust. Step 4 is to establish a shared goal. Step 5 is to ensure accountability. So set clear expectations for each role and then have regular check-ins. And it's important to know what type of leader you are. So there's 6 types. Let me pull it up, sorry. The first one is transformational, and that emphasizes change in transformation. And these leaders typically want to inspire their followers. So I think in the patient zero simulation, you kind of had to be a transformational leader. You wanted to inspire people to listen to you and help you get through this tough time. But it was also an adaptive leader because you switched. Anyways, delegate, or delegative, which is also known as laissez-faire. And this is the type of leader that doesn't micromanage and kind of just trusts people to do what they're supposed to be doing. Usually they're a little bit lazier. The third one is authoritative, so encouraging people and inspiring those around them, but overall providing the correct in your opinion direction to go. The fourth one is a transactional leader. They clearly emphasize structure. The fifth one is a democratic leader, so they listen to employees and involve them in all of their decision making. And then the sixth one is a servant leader, and that's a leader that puts others' needs before theirs. And then I was reading an article called Model for Sustainable Change, and this came up for sustaining change. I really like that it spells sustain, so I'm going to bring it up. But they say that you should support from the top first, utilize change-sustaining approaches, shift your paradigms when needed, talk and communicate, assimilate and integrate, invest in planning for sustained results, and then negotiate results with a portfolio approach. So when change is happening, especially during COVID or in the simulation during, I forget what it was called, their disease that was spreading, there's definitely going to be a lot of change, and helping people get through it is super important as a leader. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is using failure as an adaptive lesson. So the first time I did the simulation, I did pretty bad. And then each time I did it after that, I got a lot better because I used my failure and made some changes. I was an adaptive leader. So one, you want to stay humble. You want to learn from your mistakes. You want to embrace your change, and you want to filter your ideas. Not every idea that comes in your head is a good one. You want to make sure you're really thinking through them. And then there was this quote. It said, you can pick up a mistake and carry it as a burden, or you can set it down and use it as a stepping stone to greatness. And I think a lot of leaders have been through a lot of failure, and that's why they're so successful. And then my conclusion is, after completing this course and participating in the Patient Zero simulation, I learned that without the proper strategies, you'll struggle making decisions in a quick changing environment. It's important to create a culture of communication, trust, and positive relationships to be a successful leader. And I wanted to say thank you for a great class. And then here are my resources.